What's up, folks? Sean the Average Angler coming at you with another great video. And this, I'm just gonna kind of touch a little bit more on an oldie but goodie. Okay, but sort of newer, if you will. But the beauty of it down in my area is, quite honestly, it's really not utilized a whole lot. So I picked up some stuff as I'm getting ready for my trip, and I didn't order this stuff or get it for the trip, but when I got it and saw it, I was like, God, how could I not take that on this trip? Now, I want to give you a little background on this. The reason being is because I've been smashing them on this technique. Okay, so we're going to be right back and talk a little more about that. Okay, so as mentioned, I've been catching a ton of fish on this technique. It's a very simple technique. And in my area, geographically speaking, not the most popular. It's really kind of a dual purpose bait, if you will, or, dual purpose in the aspect of it's a substitute for a jig, but can also mimic some other things depending on the color you choose and that kind of thing. If you've been watching my channel for any amount of time, you would know that I love fishing a jig, but it's also been a very slow year for me jig-wise. Now, part of that could be because I'm fishing on my local body of water. I don't really know. I mean, they used to eat a jig real well there. I haven't seen anybody fishing a jig. What I've been doing really well on there is the old tube. Stupid tube, to be exact. And if you look at a tube versus the jig, they're really not a whole lot different. Maybe a bit more compact, maybe the way it moves in the water. But what I want to bring up is that I've been fishing a long time and I see trends happen. I see, more so than trends, call them cycles. Cycles can happen due to water levels in California. It's definitely water levels for us because we have fluctuating water in our reservoirs with droughts, floods, whatever it might be. So from year to year, that can change drastically. I did just stock up on tubes from Lure Parts Online. They even had the stupid tube jig heads, which those are the price is the price, but the tubes were actually like $2 a pack. Now, granted, there's 5 in a pack, but they're pretty good tubes, and I really like that purple June bug. What do they call it? Let's see. Yeah, June bug. 4-inch salty flip-in tubes. And what I really like about this is they're pretty snag resistant. I don't think I've broke one off in the last few months of fishing these. What I do like is the way they've been eating it, because they've been hitting it really hard. Like a jig bite, they pow! They're popping it hard and they're eating it. My thought is, I'm gonna have one rigged up for Clear Lake. I don't know, I'm sure we're gonna fish some docks. And many years ago, I fished a tube at Clear Lake and just waylaid them. I mean, 30-something plus pound bag, and that was back in a year when 30 plus pounds wasn't as common. It was also during the fall, or maybe it was middle of summer. But I do recall it wasn't a time when you would typically expect to see these big bags, but they were eating it so well. I want to encourage you, as viewers of my channel, to get yourself some tubes, and particularly this stupid tube rig, and give it a shot. Now, I know for you northern guys, this is nothing new. You probably fish it quite a bit. But for us down in the lower half of the country, I don't know that this is all that popular. I don't recall seeing a tackle shop where I can go in and buy the stupid tube jig head. Quite honestly, I can buy this type of jig head, but I haven't seen the stupid tube jig head. And to me, there's a big difference. This is really pulling on my brain, if you know what I mean. Anyway, fishing the stupid tube. I got two sizes here, 3/16 and I think an 1/8. Yep, 3/16 and an 1/8. Okay, both of these are in the 4/0 size. One thing, I kind of wish they made a 5/0. That seems sufficient, and we'll find out. These tubes are not quite as soft as my Boom Boom tubes. Sometimes I've noticed with baits, it can vary depending on color. Like the green pumpkin feels a little bit softer. And if I'm thinking right, the black and red may be harder. Let's see. Yeah, definitely. So the green pumpkin's softer, the black and red's a little harder. And this is a color I want to talk about, guys. When I started fishing just using a black power worm, it was kind of a big thing, right? It was really kind of all you needed at the time, as far as plastics go. I don't know a whole lot of people that fish black and red. You know, I have them, but even I'm guilty of not fishing them very much. But I have a friend that when we go fish together, he'll often tie on a black and red, especially if he's on a tough bite. And lo and behold, he'll start getting bit on it. Now, it's a very natural color, if you think about it. And it's also a color that just stands out. You can see it. You can see it in dirty water, you can see it in clean water, and in clean water, it's not like bright and obtrusive to the fish. I've seen a lot of crawdads that are, you know, black and red, dark. And that black and red looks dark. So anyway, I bought some black and red for that exact reason, that I'm gonna toss these around and experiment. You can always take the tube, and this is where I was going next, was what am I going to fish it on? Well, one, you can fish it on the spinning rod, and I have no problem doing that. And this isn't the right hook for this, but another great way to fish it, if it's just the tube they're after, is just to Texas rig it like a normal, I know it's not the right hook, folks. I just rigged it on that just to show you, but you could rig it like so, right? Now this becomes a little bit more snaggy because you have a rig moving around, that weight can drop down in a crack in the rocks and get caught. But you could peg it, or if you want to have the rattle effect, you could just peg it with a little bit of slack in front of the weight, and you could still shake it and get a little noise without it separating. And if it doesn't separate, if you're wondering why that's a big deal, well, this is a lot more difficult to get stuck in a small crack or fall into a small crack than this, right? The other reason I peg, and really the only other reason I peg, is when I'm pitching into cover or something that the bait can grab onto, and then all of a sudden the bait doesn't follow the weight to the bottom. Whereas if you got that pegged and the weight stays there, it's going to pull your bait down to where it needs to be. Getting back to what I'm going to fish this on. If this was the rig I was throwing, and this is phenomenal, by the way, for sight fishing, bed fishing, that is a 734. You hear me talk about the 734 all the time, right? It's kind of a tweener length in between, so tweener. So it works good for flipping, pitching, casting, and it's a 7.3 medium heavy to heavy. In the iRod, it's a heavy, so it can handle some line, 16 to 20 pound test, depending on where I'm throwing it into. So that's one way to do it. The other way, if I'm fishing it on a spinning rod, most likely I'm going to try and do the stupid tube. Otherwise, the exposed jig tube will work also. I just like this because it's snag resistant. I like the way it falls, although that other one's going to fall somewhat similar. But I've just been doing so well on this rig this year. And I don't know, maybe it's one of those cycles, right? Maybe it's the cycle I was talking about, and this year is going to be a tube year. It doesn't mean they're not going to eat other stuff. It just means that a blast from the past is coming back into the play, and the fish are eating it, okay? I'm kind of leaning towards that way, but I haven't tried it on enough bodies of water to say, yep, they're definitely back on the tube. I know they are on my local pond. Anyway, if you like this kind of content, like, subscribe. I'm Sean the Average Angler. We'll see you in the next one, right down there. Thanks for watching.